Kevin McGarry here, Y'all Woked Up University. I am the masterclass professor of Y'all Woked Up. My only goal is to help people awaken. So my only goal here at Y'all Woked Up University is to get y'all woked up. Here's the deal. We've been hearing a lot, especially now that we're getting into some of these midterm elections. We have some people in some parties and some progressives and leftists and all that that are really harping on this issue, what came down with the Dobbs decision, the Roe v. Wade decision, the correcting that the Supreme Court did to ultimately correct that bad decision that was actually done about 50 years ago. So we have a number of legislators, politicians, and propagandists and prognosticators who are running on that issue, who intend to really bring and illuminate that issue and make it a big issue for the voting base. So this message is for and to the voting base. Let's not be deceived. Let's not be manipulated. Let's understand really where the whole issue started from. I want to start with from the beginning of abortion. Where did abortion come from? How did it start? Who started it? Why is it here in the first place? And is it really all about women's right to choose? Those are the types of things we need to sort out before we actually go and pull a lever, especially with any kind of glee, supporting one way or the other. So here's the deal. Let's go through some history real quick. There was a man by the name of Charles Robert Darwin in the early 1800s. And he was a well-known scientist. I'm sure you're familiar with Charles Darwin. Well-known scientist. He actually had some brilliant studies and pioneered some brilliant studies on plant life and trees and things like that. And he wavered into a little bit of the human evolution and those types of theories. So in his zeal, in his zest to sort of protect his own brand of what he would deem as, or what I would deem as, white supremacy, Aryan supremacy, Caucasian supremacy, Charles Darwin really felt that there was a tremendous threat to whites, to Caucasians, to Aryans, as a result of population growth amongst other ethnicities. He gave his theories to his younger cousin, Francis Galton. He and Francis Galton put their heads together and started to actually collaborate on some ideas. Now you have to understand something about Francis Galton. Francis Galton was a well-known, actually he pioneered a lot of modern day statistics. So his biggest issue was numbers and population growth and statistics. He understood it to a T. And he ran the numbers and he says, boy, it looks bad. I mean, these other ethnicities are really populating quickly all over the world. And we, white, Aryan, Caucasians, are really not. We're not keeping up with the other populations. And he explained to his older cousin Darwin, this could mean, if there's scarcity of resources, which they both believed that there were, that ultimately the survival of the fittest would be those other ethnicities. Therefore, leaving the whites, Caucasians, Aryans as sort of second class and minorities. So Charles Darwin, you have to understand something about Charles Darwin too. Let me give you his just backdrop for your understanding. Charles Darwin was so committed to supremacy. He was so committed to his own intelligence and his own family supremacy that he envisioned that he actually married his first cousin. He wanted to keep even though he knew the risks hereditarily if they were to have children, it was more important for him to keep this sort of pure genealogy flowing through the family than otherwise. So he did marry his first cousin. They had 10 children together, 7 of which were normal, 3 of which had major medical issues the majority of their life and died prematurely. In other words, they didn't live a full life. So that's Darwin. I mean, he was absolutely committed to what we would call today white supremacy. And so he and his younger cousin said, look, we need to figure out a way, scientifically speaking, as scientists, how we can actually help prevent some of these other ethnicities from overpopulating and really taking over. Where, we're the ones who are the most intelligent. We have the best of intelligence, the best of family, and the best of culture, and all of that. So we have to maintain our supremacy. So what they decided to come up with was this thing called eugenics. Eugenics, literally defined, is well born. That's what it meant. So they decided to, and so if you carry that out, what it meant was those who are well born are protected. Those who are well born need to be, we need to basically put some sort of a protective shield around those, shield those who have, are a better breed of humanity, if you will, and make sure that we protect that class of, or that breed of person. In their mind, that was white, Caucasian, Aryans. And so they started with eugenics, meaning that those who are not well born could be summarily exterminated. Those would be people who are born with any kind of deficiencies, any kind of anybody that's infirmed, and certainly it meant other ethnicities. They viewed other ethnicities, especially via Darwin's work, since Darwin classified blacks as subhuman, apes, savages, and gorillas. They viewed other ethnicities as sort of in that pseudo subhuman class as well. And so they decided to actually concoct this scheme called eugenics, put it out there, and it was taken up. It was taken up by Hitler, Stalin, Lenin, Pol Pot, Mao. All of them pointed to Darwin as justification for exterminating, mass genocide on their own populations, for exterminating their populations. So basically they said, hey, Darwin, he's a renowned scientist. He says, we can do this, so let's do it. That was their justification. So you can think about Hitler. You think about the horrible human atrocities that he bore on the Jewish, over 6 million Jews at that time. And you think about the other atrocities borne by all these other guys. Over 100 million innocent lives have been killed, stomped out, wiped out by virtue of this sort of eugenics mindset. And again, they all point to Darwin for their full justification for what they did. Now, eugenics came to America. They're one of the most popular forms of eugenics that still is rampaging today is abortion. Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist. She was the founder of Planned Parenthood. Here's her story. She was a frequent speaker at the women's KKK. She hated blacks. She called us reckless breeders, weeds and scourge of society. And she fully embraced eugenics. She was a full Darwinist Marxist. She loved it. And so she decided, she says, look, we have to figure out ways. We don't want the word to get out, but we have to figure out ways to fully exterminate the Negro population. You can find her quote, it's out there. And so essentially that's what she did. She started her family planning clinics, those clinics we know today as Planned Parenthood. So by virtue of Margaret Sanger, by virtue of Darwinian eugenics, she had her full justification to go forward with aborting the Negro population, aborting blacks. This was her way to exterminate, in her mind, reckless breeders, weeds, scourge of society, and all other types of derogatories that she mentioned about blacks. So here's the deal. She did that. She put her centers right in the middle of black communities, where upwards of 90% of all Planned Parenthoods are in the black community. Now, the reason why they're there, it's not for women's rights. It's not for a woman's right to choose. As a matter of fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg said as much. You remember RBG? She used to be our Supreme Court Justice until she died. She died maybe 2 years ago. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg says, look, I've always known the women's right movement and abortion was never about women's right to choose. She says, I've always thought of it to be about to get rid of those we don't want too many of. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, New York Times Magazine. So do your research, it's there. So basically and essentially, even though she was on record for being a pro-abort justice, she knew exactly what it was meant to do, which was to exterminate blacks. That's why it was brought here. That's why it was started. That's why eugenics actually came about. It was, in essence, completely, totally, and unequivocally white supremacy and racism. So here's the problem we have with this whole scenario today. The whole scenario. If you are a person who is pro-abort, a person who believes in a woman's right to choose, guess what? By definition, you are firmly in support of white supremacy and racism. That's the only reason why abortion even came here. It's the only reason. There was no scientific justification for it. There was no other justification. There was no intelligence behind it. Literally, it was developed out of whole cloth, thin air. Charles Darwin, Francis Galton, motivated by white supremacy and racism. And they took that, Margaret Sanger took that, and she pressed the pedal to the metal and continued to, even this day, blacks are summarily murdered much more often than any other ethnicity in the womb, because 80-90% of all Planned Parenthoods are in our community. So the way you should begin to think about this whole issue is all of those politicians that are yelling and screaming, hyperbolic, hysterical, and shrill about the need to protect a woman's right to choose. You need to step to them or step back and say, no. No, we want to end white supremacy and racism. Even if it may be inconvenient for me or my kids or others in my family, this is a white supremacist plot that continues to be a scourge, not just on America, but around the world. And if we're going to stand for any kind of justice, this is where it starts. So, I wanted to provide you with background and history and perspective so y'all can truly awaken. If we really want to wake up, if we really want to embrace the truth, this is where it starts, folks. Let's do it right now, right here. Start to embrace the truth about where abortion comes from, what it's intended to do, the mindset of those behind it. And let's expose the white supremacist, racist plot that it is. Let's help bring others along. Let's help bring others along to the extent that they get woke up. Because hopefully, y'all woke up. We'll see you next time.